Hi to everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the F4S event, Careers in the Spotlight, which we are running in conjunction with National Careers Week. Our guest speakers today will tell their career story and share their experience, and will then answer any questions. My name is Kath, and I will be hosting today's session. And I think really without further ado, I will pass you over to Ashish, who will introduce himself, and he will tell you all about the decisions that he made when he was at school and what he's done with his career since. So without further ado, Ashish, if you want to just get started.
Thank you very much, Kath. Hi, hello. My name is Ashish Umre. I'm based in Brighton, and I've been living in the UK since 1999. But I grew up in India, in New Delhi, and I was there till about the age of 18, 19. So I'll go back and I'll start my education journey in India, which is a very different schooling system, very different environment that I grew up in. And I did my bachelor's, or my sort of the first graduation there before coming here to pursue my higher education and graduate studies. So the journey is essentially me being very passionate about science and mathematics, and throughout my career. And in school, I think what the kinds of things that excited me were quite broad range. So I was in the choir. I liked the sort of electronics clubs. I liked a lot of experimentation, if you like, which went good and bad, as you would imagine. But what kept me going was this passion to learn, be kind of curious about things. And so when it came to a decision, which was that decision of where do we go, what choices do you make? Interestingly, I came up to my parents and I said, actually, I don't know. I'd love to work in the hospitality industry because I love cooking, I love traveling, and I want to, I don't know, I want to do different things. But I also love science. How do I kind of make that work? And I think my father was very supportive and he said, you know what? Why don't you try and give entrance exams to all? So I gave all these entrance exams to enter the hospitality industry, and I got through. I also gave a lot of engineering exam tests, and I got through to most of them. And I think really going through that process made me realize what my real passion was. So I think it was a final interview in one of the hospitality industry boardrooms where I kind of said if I given the choice, I would go for science, then hospitality, which was a bold answer at that moment. So I was told that, go for it, follow your passion. And which is kind of what I did. So I joined a physics honors degree. I gave up. I didn't give up, but I kind of got accepted into an engineering degree in computer sciences, which I then dropped out of physics and joined up computing science and telecoms. I did that for 4 years, but it took me out of my comfort zone because I had to leave Delhi and go down to the south of India and be in a small village for 4 years. Where I didn't know the language, so I had to learn to speak a new language. I was culturally very different, and for people who know about India or don't know, India is a big country, so there's lots of languages, lots of different cultures, and it was completely out of my comfort zone. But I did spend those 4 years and went through those sort of the personal struggles, if you call it, and academic learning to come out quite different. And I think when I went back home, my parents kind of recognized that it was a learning journey, not just as an academic, but also in ways which changed me as a person. I kind of grew up very differently to how they would have expected if I had just stayed home. And you don't appreciate these things, right? Life, your career journeys are very non-linear, and life is very non-linear. And therefore, I think it's kind of you becoming the sort of bigger than the sum of the parts of your education and other kinds of learnings. It's really important to appreciate. And I took that with me when I came back to Delhi, and I said, well, there was an opportunity. I started working in a bank, and suddenly one day through a careers fair, I got to hear about a program an academic program here in the UK. And again, it was my parents who said, you've always been quite passionate about doing artificial intelligence. We have no idea what it means, and we don't even know that exists as a subject. But here is a master's program. Do you want to go and do it? I said yes. Again, bold decision. Um, and I came to the UK. And that was in 1999. I went through a whole year of learning, and I exposed myself to a whole range of different subjects which I would have said yes to. Education in India is quite different in terms of your ability to explore beyond the scope of your structured learning process. And that for me was fascinating. So I studied biology, neuroscience, uh, genealogy, animal behavior, and so on outside of computing and telecom. And it just felt like there was a calling there, and I got attracted to social insects, and that's what I picked up to do as my thesis, which eventually led me to pursuing a doctoral degree in studying insect colonies and social systems. Um, I think when I look back, those joining of the dots isn't something I could have made by myself. It just naturally occurred, right? You cannot join looking forward. You always join the dots looking backwards of how things happened. And that serendipitous journey of choices and learnings, I think, brought me to where I kind of came to be. But beyond academic life, again, it was a series of choices that I made where I met people who said, hey, do you want to apply what you've learned in the area of marketing? And I joined the marketing agency to develop some software product looking at how people make online consumer decisions. And it felt like quite similar to how ants and bees make foraging decisions to find food. So I tried to combine those kind of learning in different areas and use that as a way to approach in a very open-minded way of something that I had no idea what that field was about. Um, I progressed from there, learned a lot about working in so-called the real world, um, and understanding the constraints of what is open-ended learning versus learning where it's all driven by customer outcomes or business outcomes and so on. And what are the challenges and as somebody who thinks open and broadly. And I think to complement that, I also exposed myself to joining different industries. I went on from that small digital agency to join Tesco in a global role, looking at setting up an analytics and data practice there in a team, which was again working in a big, broad organization and brings a lot of different kinds of learning, but also enjoying how you can apply different parts of yourself in very, very different ways. And the kind of that appeal to apply creative thinking and critical thinking to things that you not necessarily are in your comfort zone. I transitioned from there into insurance, which is where I am right now, in a global innovation function for AXA XL, which is a division of AXA. And the kind of work we do is we look at big complex risks. And AXA XL looks at things like climate change, so the vaccine rollout. We insure big events like the Olympics or Wimbledon or big concerts. Look at supply chain disruption. All the big industries like aviation, retail, and so on. But it's that nature of sort of complex systems thinking that brings me back into connecting uncertainty and understanding how we define risk and how we can mitigate and manage risk in a more informed way. And therefore, I constantly look at all these interconnected parts of how information travels between these systems and how we make decisions where information is generally quite imperfect. That's just the reality of the world we live in. So whether you make those imperfect decisions in your life by just knowing what you know in the moment and make a sound judgment, or in business or in research where you have limited information and you need to experiment your way and test and learn of how you would come out and approach, And that I think has been kind of the mantra of test and learn, experiment, and use information. But I certainly would say that what I've learned is I value the mentorship and the support that I've received through my life. The people involved in helping me make some choices, some informed and some more about take a leap of faith and just go and do it. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. But other than that, yeah, I think it's your intrinsic curiosity and that extrinsic kind of motivation. I think it's an interplay between what are some of those external goals you're trying to achieve and what is it that purposefully gives you happiness. Because it's very important to have fun. And I think I would always conclude by saying in anything you do, you should look for the fun element and what makes you happy, because otherwise you will never be connected passionately to something that excites you. So this is a whistle stop tour of where I come from and where I am right now, and yeah.
Hello, hi, it's Louise here from Founders for Schools.
Hi, Louise.
Hello, thank you. That is absolutely fascinating. What would you say to a young person who is currently considering a career using science or maths or any of the STEM subjects and artificial intelligence? What would you say to them? Good area to go into?
I can't. So I would say keep your mind very open. The beauty of being this early in your career is that you can explore a whole broad range of disciplines and areas, and never I'd say never say no. Just because it's an area you don't understand or don't understand enough about doesn't mean that there isn't any help. I mean, the beauty of these days of having technology and digital tools is we have lots of free open knowledge out in the internet, lots of very structured and very informal ways, lots of people sharing knowledge. I would have loved to have access to this kind of these platforms when I was in school, to be able to just go and feed my curiosity. I wanted to be an astrophysicist. That's where I wanted to do, and I would not have mapped that journey to where I am right now. But I certainly say that I could have, I can passionately engage in areas that I can say I understand a little bit of. And I think the rest is all down to what experiences and how they kind of connect you to it. But yeah, I wouldn't limit myself to say do this and this is what will get you to AI, because AI is a multidisciplinary field which came out of lots of different fields, and it continues to be so. So that would be my advice.
That's very interesting. So you may have a speciality in one field that could contribute to AI, but you
Absolutely.
don't have to be an expert in the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, right. Thank you. And for young people at home who don't yet know what they want to do, I think I can guess what you would say to them, but go on. If somebody doesn't have a career plan yet, what would you say to them?
So I think there's different ways of looking at it. Like I said, I came up with two very different choices, and it was through speaking with my family, my mentors, my people I kind of looked up to, that helped me kind of make that more open choice of go for this or just go for it. And there were school teachers who kind of said, well, look at the kinds of things that appeal to you. So go for your passion, but also the kinds of skills you have, and recognize the areas where you do excel. And perhaps that's a good starting point to say, I'm naturally good at certain things, so I should lean towards them, but keeping an open mind that you could actually broaden that and connect with other things over time. So the same skills can be applied in many different fields, but where your starting point doesn't always have to be your ending, your destination.
Oh, thank you. Your starting point doesn't always have to be your destination, and combine your skills and your passion, and then you'll find the route for you. Is that right? That's really good advice. Thank you so much. Can you give me an example? Because this is a relatively new field. Can you give me and some of the viewers some examples of job titles of jobs within the AI field?
Yeah, so it's kind of become a very interesting. So data science is one that I think is quite well known these days across. And again, it's emerged from fields like just analytics or business analysis. but it's gone beyond just that into looking at analytics in a very broad sense of the word. And just by looking at what people would have called descriptive analytics, of just understanding how things are, looking backwards, to more predictive analytics of thinking of, can I predict, or can I, using some information that I have now, can I look at what can I project towards the future? And we applied that across a whole range of disciplines. So, job titles could range from a whole area, things like a data engineering job title, data science. You could be a chief analytics officer. You could be a head of artificial intelligence, head of machine learning. So there's a whole broad range where people, and I think the creativity of titles that we're seeing more speaks for themselves. I think people are inventing like chief innovation, no, what was it called? Chief ideas officer or chief algorithms officer. And I think there is no end to it. I think it's more about what you do and how you kind of build that diverse team around you. Is what excites me.
Thank you. You've mentioned a couple of times about working with other people to make the end result. So is teamwork very important?
Absolutely. I think if one thing I would say is, besides skills, the softer skills that we don't necessarily pay that much attention to. And now, one subject that I would have always said that I would have learned, or I would love to include in early academic learning, is psychology. We're social beings. Therefore, understanding each other allows us to understand how we communicate with each other. And communication, storytelling, is so important in business and in any form of life. Our ability to tell stories has got us from where we were thousands of years ago to where we are right now. And I think storytelling continues to be really important. So if you can be the bridge builders and communicators, those softer skills actually have a huge amount of value in how you communicate, because you could be really knowledgeable but not be able to communicate or transmit that knowledge to other people, or your ideas and your thinking. And it's really important to try and hone in on those skills and improve them over time. And you could do that through various ways. Singing is a great way, to just find a way to let go, find that creative way. People write, they write diaries, they write notes, they take part in debates. There's a lot of academic learning structures, and I think there's things called attitude to learning these days in schools that is used.
That's right, yeah.
So it's not about your grades, it's more about your attitude to learning, which is a lot about resilience, your passion, your curiosity, all of those things, which aren't about grades. They aren't necessarily about the exact marks of getting things right. It's about the approach that you take and the way you're trying to solve a problem rather than actually solving the problem or not.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you. Your attitude to learning. Yeah. I'm going to let our other speaker join us now, please.
Yes, please.
Introduce themselves and tell us about their job title and what they do.
Sure. First thing I wanted to say, Ashish, was just thank you so much for that. I don't know about anyone else who's on this call, but I feel completely inspired basically right now. So thanks for that. And thanks also for the really solid advice. So yes, hi everybody who I can't see on the call. My name is Gunesh Taylor. I am also a doctor like Ashish, so I too have a PhD. But I studied, in the end, I did a PhD in sort of molecular biology, as it was. And I think in some ways I was a bit different to most people. So when I was 15, my family was in Turkey at the time. And actually we'd moved there. So my heritage is Turkish, but we just sort of moved back there for that year that I was 15. And it was around that time that I was lucky enough to have a sort of a bit of lab experience. My mum was teaching at a university. I sort of snuck my way in, as you do, and was just like interested in biology stuff amongst various things. So I think
the first thing I would probably say to anyone listening to this call is, at the age of like 15, there's very few people who just like immediately know what they want to do. First thing I ever said I wanted to do was be an astronaut. My mum shut that conversation down pretty quickly, unfortunately. She was like, you are not going to Mars. You have responsibilities on Earth. But, you know, I then wanted to do art and design. That was something I was really good at. I also, you know, actually maths was one of my strongest subjects, but I really enjoyed biology. So, you know, not knowing what you want to do is completely normal. But exactly as Ashish said, what then happens is you sort of start to explore. And I was lucky enough to do that, I was very much encouraged to do that. Start having conversations with people and looking around the world and thinking, would I want to do that job? Does that look like something that's interesting to me? And then I guess I got lucky from that perspective. So I sort of struck gold at 15. I did a bit of time in this research lab and I absolutely just fell in love with it. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. And so actually that then saw me go on like a bit of a whirlwind 15 years now. It's been since that moment pretty much. But I was so motivated to do this. I actually left home. I left my mum and my dad and my brother in Turkey. I said, I need to study this subject. I need to get certain A levels to get onto a sort of molecular biology degree. The school that I was at in Turkey wasn't going to let me do the subject range that I needed to do. So I moved back to the UK. I moved in with my step-grandparents. I worked a part-time job and just went to a random college in Weston-super-Mare, which is most famous for its pier and its donkeys, you know, not the highest level of achievement. But the point was, you know, I was enthusiastic to do that. I really just wanted to try. And then I managed to get onto a human genetics degree at Nottingham University, which is, you know, it's a solid university. It's not the top university in the world. But during that time, I did a lot of internships. I took the opportunity again to try different things out. So I did lab internships, obviously, because I really enjoyed that. And then something started happening, which would be my second point of interest for anyone who's looking to sort of, you know, looking at how to sort of, you know, progress through their career, which is even when you love something, to get good at it, it's hard. So during my degree, it got hard. And that's when I started thinking, oh, I don't know about this. Like, you know, I like it and that, but it's a bit tough, isn't it? Like, do I want to do something else kind of thing? Am I cut out to do this? So again, I did similar things. So I did a bunch of internships. I did a marketing and communications summer placement just for a couple of weeks to sort of try that out. And actually, after my undergraduate degree, I was probably lacking in some confidence. I thought, well, that was pretty tough, actually. That was a lot tougher than I thought. I thought, you know, if I like it and it's interesting, I'll just do great at it immediately. And so I did actually end up leaving academia, as it were, after that point. I went and took a marketing and communications role for a science charity, which was a great cause also. And I thought, yeah, this is great. And within weeks of starting this thing, I thought, I've done a terrible mistake here. And you know what, even if it's tough, I want to try. I don't care if I'm the best. I just want to be the best that I can be. And so I started applying for jobs again. And so I ended up going back into a university. I worked for a year as a research assistant. I then signed up for a PhD. I did that. And now I'm in the Francis Crick Institute here in London. And I work as a postdoc. I'm doing, you know, stuff that science, basically biology research that I'm really, really stoked to do. And just like Ashish said, actually, you know, one of the best things about that whole experience, and especially the bit where I left academia for a while and did some other stuff, is that really translated actually into me being able to do a better job of my actual job in science. But also I do a lot of science communication activities, which are now increasingly part of our job description. And that, you know, the skill set that I developed during those sort of internships, which weren't directly related to, you know, doing research in a lab, as it goes, has turned out to be one of the best skill sets that I ever invested in. So, you know, I tried things out. Passion is really important. It's never going to make it a walk in the park. Anything worth really having, I think, is probably going to involve a bit of effort. And then the last thing I wanted to say that Ashish was completely bang on the money with, I thought, was the point about psychology. So during my PhD, I developed a real penchant for reading about psychology, and especially sports psychology, because I I'm a runner, I'm a keen runner, but you know, I'm no Usain Bolt or, you know, anyone else, Mo Farah, you know, I'm not that good. But what I found really, really interesting is the mindset of people who achieve, people who like just love what they're doing and are at the top of their game. And there's a lot of interesting psychology research into that I started reading up on. And they all talk about exactly what Ashish said, which is people who achieve are people who have an intrinsic drive, an actual reason for themselves, for what they think is worth doing and what they're good at, some sort of general leaning towards having competency, right? Being vaguely good at something is usually enjoyable, right? Like, who doesn't like to be told, good job, right? We all get that reinforcement. But it also helps if you have like an external reason for why you do it, like a reason why you value what you're doing, like in your head, not just with like, it feels good. And I read a lot about that, and I would encourage anyone to read about their favorite sports person, artist, whatever it is. Anyone at the top of their game is going to tell you, you have to work hard, you have to develop some grit, you have to develop some self-confidence. And it's these things that, you know, are very easy to point out at the front, like end of your career. And exactly as Ashish said, you know, you look back and in hindsight and you think, yeah, that was the moment where I developed some conviction. But just keeping that in mind as you set off on this journey, that these are amongst the trials that you will face, I think is really, really important. So that's kind of the potted version of what I've done and how I've ended up here, and a few bits of advice as well.
Thank you. That is absolutely inspiring and some perfect and very useful advice to the people at home. Thank you. That if something's worth it, probably going to be hard at times, but yes, and having a reason to do it is absolutely vital. I really love your story. I think that is a great note to end on. To the people at home, thank you for joining us. Please remember to complete the poll about do you now feel informed about your career options? And to our guests, many, many thanks for giving up your time to talk to us. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both. That was really, really great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks.